What's going on, everyone? So, the Toronto Raptors are in a very interesting situation, right? They probably should have started the rebuild and kind of sold off some of their players this past trade deadline. They decided not to. They ended up falling short and were disappointing. And now it looks like they're kind of going to maybe potentially have no choice but to hit the rebuild button, right? They just lost Fred VanVleet. How do they replace that guy? Gary Trent Jr., he very likely could end up opting out of his contract, and then you lose him. It's kind of getting to that point where it's like, all right, it's time to retool here a little bit. It's time to rebuild. It's time to trade and unload some of these guys. And one of the guys that is rumored to be highly sought after, but also was heavily in trade rumors at the trade deadline, was Pascal Siakam. Pascal Siakam, 29 years old, got good size, good length. At 6'8", 6'9", 7'3" wingspan, kind of that he's evolved into that point forward type player. So he's a guy that you could run your offense through. He's a guy that could play in multiple positions, guard multiple positions, has a lot of value for the Toronto Raptors last season. He's also a guy that plays. He played 71 games, averaged 37 and a half minutes, which is a heavy amount of minutes for a guy. Shot 48% from the field. Not a great three-point shooter. Shot 32% from two-point range, but was a 24, 8, and 5 guy who plays some solid defense, great two-way player, and could really kind of round out a roster nicely. Teams like the Golden State Warriors were heavily rumored. But now we're seeing reports that the Atlanta Hawks are looking to acquire Pascal Siakam. And based on these reports, basically anybody except for Trae Young is available for a Pascal Siakam deal. Pascal Siakam and Trae Young would be a very interesting duo. How well does that pairing work with Pascal Siakam kind of being a guy that's kind of been the main playmaker in a lot of ways for Toronto? Yes, he's played off the ball a lot, right? Fred VanVleet, being the point guard, has handled the ball. But Fred VanVleet played off the ball a lot and was kind of like their designated three-point shooter at times, and they would run through Pascal Siakam. Trae Young is best with the ball in his hands, and there's kind of been those question marks at times with DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, because DeJounte Murray is best with the ball in his hands too, but Trae Young is the better of the two, so it's like you want to keep the ball in Trae Young's hands. I do like Pascal Siakam on the Atlanta Hawks. I think that could be a very interesting fit, especially if you can kind of keep some of the core guys. If you get Pascal Siakam, then you're probably moving off of John Collins. But does Toronto want John Collins? I don't know. So at that point, do you go look for a 3-team deal, or do you do a deal without John Collins and then maybe go look to trade John Collins elsewhere? That could be a possibility. There were some talks with the Dallas Mavericks about the Mavericks maybe trading the 10th pick, although those talks kind of fell through. But Trae Young and Pascal Siakam could be a lot of fun. If you get Siakam, I think you have to trade John Collins, and I think you have to trade DeJounte Murray, because Pascal Siakam can kind of be the idea of what DeJounte Murray is, but plays a different position. So Trae Young can kind of be the one. You have Siakam at the 4. You could maybe keep Clint Capella, or maybe you go maybe try to upgrade Capella for a Jakob Poeltl. Maybe you try to work something like that out to where you get a couple pieces. That could be interesting. I don't know how much, what would Toronto want in a potential Siakam trade, right? They're probably, because if you're trading Siakam, you're probably rebuilding. So you're probably going to want some nice young assets, some nice young picks, a combination of picks and players. You'd have Scotty Barnes, so he's kind of got the guy that you're going to build around at that point. Maybe you keep OG Anunoby, although you could probably get a really good return for him. Supposedly, a team offered 4 firsts for OG. So, what are you looking at for Pascal Siakam? Are you looking at 4 firsts and 2 players or something like that? Would Atlanta be willing to give up that much for him? There's a lot of question marks. Siakam could help a lot of teams. I mean, you're talking about an elite 3-and-D style. Well, maybe not three, but you talk about an elite point forward, defensive type guy. Good size, good length, a guy that could put the ball in the hoop. That is what a lot of teams could really use. So I definitely could see competition for a Pascal Siakam, and that could bode kind of bad and poorly for Atlanta. But again, they could maybe work out a 3-team trade. They have some nice pieces that I think could help some teams. Like I still think John Collins is a better player than he gets credit for. And for whatever reason, Atlanta really just, it's almost like from the moment they drafted Collins, like that was it. They just wanted to get rid of him. And I think part of that kind of plays into the whole John Collins in Atlanta and his poor play at times. Because, how do you show up for a team that you know that has been trying to trade you for the last 3 years, right? Like that just makes things very tough, right? It's like, really, like I have to, here we go again, and every time there's, a trade deadline or, an off season or whatever, all of the conversation is about you getting traded. I think John Collins could really use just a change of scenery, period. But I think if you get Siakam, you got to get rid of Murray and you got to get rid of Collins, right? Whether those two guys are included in a deal for Pascal Siakam, which that could make a lot of sense, right? DeJounte Murray's 26 years old. The Raptors just lost, Fred VanVleet, so they could probably use a point guard. So you could get a DeJounte Murray. So now you got a point guard who can kind of play and be and run the show and operate the show. That could be very valuable. And then you could get a John Collins to replace Pascal Siakam. John Collins is only 25. So again, like you could have John Collins, DeJounte Murray, you'd have Scotty Barnes, and you'd have OG Anunoby, or you could look to trade him. I mean, I don't think that that's a terrible move. Can you maybe even get like a DeAndre Hunter in that deal, right? Because then at that point, now you got like your point guard, you got your shooting guard, you got your small forward, your power forward. You keep Jakob Poeltl as your center. I don't think that that's a bad move. I don't think that's a bad trade for OG Anunoby. Pascal Siakam. I don't think that that's bad at all. Because I mean, what other deal impact? Because you're getting two young players. Like, let's say it is just DeJounte Murray and John Collins. You're getting two young players that would fit two needs that you would have because you lost Fred VanVleet and you'd be trading Pascal Siakam. So you basically get that replacement. And then on top of that, you probably maybe could convince Atlanta to give up a pick or so or two. So you get some picks. Like, what else are you going to get? Right? Maybe the Knicks. Would the Knicks give you like RJ Barrett, Grimes, and a couple firsts? Maybe. Right? So now you're talking about maybe a comparable package, but I think John Collins might be, I mean, you can make an argument he's better than RJ Barrett. DeJounte Murray, I think he's slept on it from a point guard perspective. I think he's pretty good. Grimes has some upside, has some nice potential and stuff like that, but I don't know. I don't think that there are many better options than what Atlanta could provide. Right? Like the Warriors, would they trade Jordan Poole in Kuminga, right? And do a deal like that for Pascal Siakam? If you're the Raptors, then that might be better just because Jordan Poole's upside and potential. He can kind of be your starting point guard because you lost Fred VanVleet. And he averages like 26 a game without Steph Curry. So you know you're getting a 25 plus a game guy. And you'd have Jordan Poole and Scotty Barnes for the foreseeable future. I think if the Warriors were willing to do that, I think that would probably be the best trade for Pascal Siakam. But I think Atlanta is a close second. I do. I think that's pretty nice. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Let me know down in the comments below. What do you think? do you like the idea of Atlanta going after Pascal Siakam? Do you think no? Atlanta should go look elsewhere. I just, I kind of don't. At times, I kind of wonder what Atlanta's doing, right? Like again, I like the pairing of Siakam and Trae Young, but I didn't really understand the DeJounte Murray thing. I mean, I understood the idea. I just thought it didn't really make sense, right? Siakam, I think, makes a lot more sense. But I think they need to just kind of get back to letting Trae Young be Trae Young, put some shooters around Trae Young, maybe have a point forward like Pascal Siakam, and everyone else is basically shooters, right? And you have let Trae Young kind of play the 3-and-D. Like I think Trae Young on Toronto would be great because that's kind of the one thing Toronto doesn't have is a guy that can just go get buckets and set everybody else up. Like Toronto is nothing but a bunch of like 6'8", 6'9" forwards that can defend and knock down threes occasionally, but they don't have that guy that can just go get that bucket getter, right? They don't have that guy that's just like, I can go drop 30 a night. They don't have that. And so I think Toronto could really, like, if you put Trae Young on Toronto, I think Toronto would be very good, right? So, but like the reason I even mentioned that is because that's kind of the mold that I think Atlanta should go. Bunch of 3-and-D, sizable guys, because the one thing that Trae Young doesn't have is size and defense. So you put a bunch of like Pascal Siakam type guys around him, and you let Trae Young be Trae Young. You let him go get his 30 and 12 a game, and you're probably having a lot of success. It's kind of what I lean to. But again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments.